need to deal with the threat, the asymmetric threat of terror that is new. These people in the caliphate the size of Indiana are not living in caves. They're not isolated and marginalized as Al-Qaeda has been, although they are on the run as well. ISIS is a caliphate, a nation state almost, with 30 to 40,000 battle-tested terrorists that receive hundreds of millions of dollars, and each day they exist in the form of a caliphate, they're a threat to our way of life. Now, the president will say, well, they're not going to invade us, as though that is the only way a threat could be carried out. Of course, that's not the only way that could be carried out. Our vulnerability is our freedom, and we have to be vigilant. But we'll never be vigilant just by playing defense. And we'll never be vigilant thinking that this is some kind of video game war, that you can just do it from the sky. Only the United States can lead a coalition to destroy ISIS. And it should be the first priority of the next President of the United States. In August of this year, I laid out a detailed strategy to do this. Not in reaction to the tragedy of Paris and the tragedy of San Bernardino, in advance of it, because the threat, as Lindsay knows, existed long before the attacks on our country and the attack that took place in Paris. We need to embed our troops with the Iraqi military. There's a great resistance in this administration. That needs to be done. We need to arm the Kurds directly, in my mind. There's some discussion about why that's important. I think we need to show support directly for the Kurds, but more importantly, the weapon, the caliber of the support that we give needs to be significantly upgraded. We need to regain our footing with our Sunni partners that created the surge, a successful effort that created a fragile, secure Iraq when we left, that has been destroyed by the lack of attention and activity. We need to get back in the game with them. We need to get the lawyers off the backs of the warfighters. For goodness sakes, this is a war. This is not a law enforcement exercise, which means that approvals for sorties should be given much more leeway for the commanders on the ground rather than having to get permission from the Pentagon. This is not the way we're going to be successful in dealing with people who don't play by our rules. We'll adhere to international standards. ISIS won't. We don't have to be like them, but we certainly should not tie the hands of the warfighters as we do today in Syria and Iraq. We need a no-fly zone or a series of no-fly zones in Syria. We need safe zones in Syria, and be serious about it. This tragedy of the refugee crisis will only be resolved if we are serious about bringing stability in Iraq. It's in our national security interest to do so. That is a proper strategy where America leads, where we will have special operators training a force in Syria and emboldening the Iraqi military and engaging with the Kurds and Sunnis to bring about stability in this region. If we're serious about eradicating terrorism, we have to recognize that this is a long-haul effort. First, we need to eliminate the caliphate, and then we need to stick with it, because our freedom is at stake. And to me, this is the fight of our time, and we cannot take a step back. One thing that makes it more difficult for me to imagine how we're going to be successful in this is when we pull back, voids are filled by an aggressive Russia as it relates to Syria, by Iran, fomenting instability in the region in ways now that we can only imagine. $100 billion is going into the coffers of a legitimized Iran that now is a nuclear threshold country that will use that money for purposes that won't be in the benefit of the Iranian people. Here's what my belief is. Mullahs do not go quietly into the night. They don't. This will enhance their ambitions of instability in the region for them to project their force to create a more dominant position in the region. We have to confront the ambitions of Iran while we're focusing on destroying ISIS. This journey will be arduous, but it is a fight worth having. And without American leadership, we will have chaos in the world. We will have capitals that will be unable to deal with these threats of terror in Europe and in the United States. This is not the time to play defense. This is the time to play offense. And I think we can build a bipartisan consensus to make it happen. The final thing I'd say